finally over.
Sadly, it's not over, Heniko. Bloober Team is still remaking Silent Hill 1. So what made the old Silent Hills great? Well, what made the old Silent Hill great to me is the environments, the storytelling, and the puzzles. These are the things I found very memorable, and I would think most Silent Hill fans of the originals found very memorable. So let's talk about the combat in this game, because notice I didn't say combat to be a big thing, because if you played the original Silent Hill games, you would know the combat is not main focus of the game. Like I said, the three pillars are what I just said before: the storytelling, the puzzles, and the environment. But this game, I have to outright come out and tell you, the combat is horrible. It is terrible. The game almost forces you to combat most of the time. Yes, you can skip some enemies here and there, but there are bosses that you have to fight. Not only that, sometimes it spawns many enemies in front of you or in a specific section, and you have to fight them. Like, for example, there was this fog area that it was supposed to be a puzzle about scarecrows, and the game almost forces you to fight some of the enemies. Or if you happen to make one mistake in the puzzle, it would just constantly make the enemy spawn and chase you the whole time. So you already messed up there, and you have to kill them. But either way, there are other sections of the game where they would spawn multiple enemies on you and you have to fight them. Now, what makes the combat terrible is that you do have a stamina bar, which I do not want to deal with. I know this is a Silent Hill game. I'm not expecting a stamina bar to be in the bottom left of my screen, but this game has a stamina bar, and mind you, you have also perks, and you can upgrade yourself. You can upgrade your stamina, you can upgrade your health. This is essentially a Souls-like game. I know as much as you don't want to hear Souls-like, but this is essentially what it's doing. Or maybe not fully Souls-like, but it's doing what the modern game usually does with the lock-on feature, and you have to dodge left, you have to dodge right, you have to have a perfect dodge. Not that it is a dodge, but it is more like an evade. But there's a perfect evade mechanic in the game where you can perfect evade, and it gives you your stamina fully back, and you can keep attacking. So essentially the game wants you to keep hitting the enemies. Not only that, that's also a problem. Not only that, but you also have a durability on your weapons. Oh my lord, I was not expecting them to go this far into it. You can tell they wanted you to fight, they wanted you to use the mechanics. There are essentially two worlds. So there's the normal world with the fog, and then there's the other world, like your traditional Silent Hill. The other world, you have no durability. You get to fight monsters, and they spawn a lot more monsters there, but you fight monsters over and over and over and over throughout all of the section, essentially. I don't think there's ever been a section of the game there weren't any monsters. The monsters followed you consistently. Now, and then you have the normal world where you have durability on your weapons. Now, did I find the durability annoying? Not really, because the game did spawn this like consumable that allowed you to repair your weapon. Not only that, I think most of the time you probably are going to run past the enemies because you don't want to engage in the combat too much. So you could try to, but then there are sections where they do not allow you to run away from the enemies, and you have to fight them, you have to hit them, especially when they start spawning in enemies that are fast and that chases you. So that's where the game gets to the point where it's forcing you to fight some of these enemies, because you can't really turn around and run away. Despite the game not having fixed cameras and you can essentially control the camera as much as you want, you still have enemies that will chase you throughout the whole entire level and not allow you to do what you want to do, which is the puzzle. And you have to kill that enemy, because it would consistently respawn. And I think that is a bad thing. And I didn't even get to the bosses yet. The bosses are essentially lock on, you dodge, you hit, dodge, you hit, you have perfect dodges, of course, if you can hit them. So if you played a Souls game before in your life, you will have a good enough reaction time to dodge the bosses. This is where I notice Silent Hill has lost its identity. I don't know what this is. If you pay attention to any of the Silent Hills that so-called innovated in the combat, they weren't really successful because combat is not what you want to focus on playing a Silent Hill game. I'm not here to fight bosses 1v1 as if it's a Sekiro game or a Souls game or a God of War Ragnarok game. As much as, again, you don't want to hear that, but essentially that's what it is. There is literally a stamina bar that you have to sit there and monitor. So the Silent Hill franchise has officially lost its identity in that way, where it's focusing on that. And I think that was a bad implementation. I think that was a bad game design. If you look at the older games, yes, the combat wasn't the best. I can agree with you there. But the combat was fairly just simple. You hold a button and you click a button and the player does an action. So you having to now lock on enemies. Not only that, I think around locking on, you have this specific power up, which I forgot what it's called, an Omni something. It's a Japanese word, but you would essentially hold control, which is on PC, but I don't know what it is on controller. You would hold control and it would go in this like slow motion stage, which allow her to parry. Yes, I said what I said. You're parrying in a Silent Hill game. Do not do that, please. This is essentially taking the Silent Hill 2 remake route, where it wants you to fight enemies. I don't want to do that, especially in this type of game. This is not that, we're not in super survival horror territory where I have to manage my inventory. By the way, that's another feature. You also have to manage your inventory. Whereas in the old Silent Hill games, what made it differ from the Resident Evil games is that you didn't have to do that, but you also had to collect specific items that you had to combine or, think about to use in your puzzle solving. This game doesn't have that. More consumables corrupted my inventory. I had so many health packs. There are these pills lying around that you can connect, that you can collect, which also connects to the story, but we will get to that later. You have big stim packs. I say stim packs, but big health pack. You have bandages. You have food that you can eat. You also have these drinks, holy water, I think it is, that allow your stamina to go higher. Or not higher, but replenish your stamina. And I don't want that in my Silent Hill game. That's not innovation, by the way. You're just using the stupid modern gaming trope and putting it in this specific game. And I don't think it's a good idea. It was pretty jank, mind you. Playing against bosses, they weren't difficult, but it just was not good. It didn't feel good. It wasn't good. That's that. Since we are still on gameplay, let's talk about the level design, because this game feels extremely linear. I said this about Silent Hill 2 Remake. Something about the way they make the level design is extremely linear. Maybe it's go down this hallway, go upstairs. Now, I understand that the original Silent Hill had, it was linear in a way, but they made it feel more that it had more into the level design by allowing you to go in specific rooms, and there were many levels, not just 2 levels. There were many levels throughout the wherever specific section. Like, for example, you have the hospital in Silent Hill 2, you have the mansion in Silent Hill 2. Like, there were many levels throughout the game that made it feel like this section is, more than it has more, you should explore it. It feels like there are more out there, or there are more in this section that you could do, right? Whereas in this game, it is extremely linear. Go down here, most of the doors are locked. That wouldn't be a problem, but the map already tells you which doors that you can touch or you can interact with. So either way, you're not really looking in rooms. You're just looking at the map to see, okay, this door I can interact with. I'm going straight there. I'm not going to really test the other doors. And this is before you even go to them. Usually in the original Silent Hills, you have to go up to the door and then James or whoever is the protagonist will write on the map, okay, I can't go this way, or this way is locked, or I need a key for here. Whereas in this game, it is weirdly just feels so linear, where you just go to this specific section and it doesn't feel like there's many levels to it. It doesn't feel like you're really spending much time in this specific in these areas, because most of the time you're bouncing from the other world to the real world, and the real world is not, the level design is not too good. And I was thinking, okay, maybe in the real world it's not, you know, it's not too good. In the other world, surely it will be fantastic. Not really. In the other world, it's actually worse. The level design is more linear than the real world, or the, you know, whatever, the real world. And I think that is a disappointing part of the game, because it doesn't feel like I'm you know, I don't know what about it. I really don't know what about the original Silent Hill felt like it was less linear than this. I think it might be due to how they designed the levels, maybe, and how skinny certain areas are, and how straightforward the game is. I think this is why maybe it feels very linear, despite the old games being linear themselves. But do you remember like Silent Hill 4, like towards where you're backtracking in the apartment, how there were so many levels throughout that game? Whereas then you have this game, it's only like 2 levels for each section. And that is disappointing. I was hoping the level design would at least, if the combat sucked, the level design would at least be better. The you know, it wouldn't be just a straightforward linear game, which I don't mind linear game. I'm not saying it had to be fully open world and, you know, it had to show it had to have a big map. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying it should have been, it should have felt more open. It should have felt more, you know, I want to go here, what's over here, I want to enter this room, what's in this room. It should have had more levels to it besides just 2 levels. Like, I would take this specific example, like the school. The school is very, 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 very linear, and it's a small section of the game, which I don't mind, but I do want more levels. I want it to go deeper. Whereas in the old Silent Hills, there were many levels throughout this sections, and it made it felt like there were more to do. Whereas in this game, it's very straightforward. Here's an honorable mention. My favorite section of the game has to be when Hinako, which is the protagonist, goes back to her house. And I say this section is my favorite because, well, it really reminds me of Silent Hill, so I have to give it the credit. It was the best section of the game, despite it, I think it was 75% through the game. But she goes back to her house, and her house turns into essentially like a bigger maze or something, right? The reason I love that section is because, first, the environment was actually good. There was this section where the roof was like lava or something, and it was good. I really liked what they were trying to go for there, and I also liked how the room changed. So, for example, throughout this section, there was this door you had to open via puzzle. You had to look for a specific coin to like put in the door and solve that puzzle, right? So the game allowed you to go back in time and like grab different objects to bring back into your real world, which I think is cool. I think they should have used that throughout the world more. Do little stuff like that. That would have made the level design less linear. I think I finally figured out, I got the revelation of why it felt very, very linear. It's because nothing changed. Everything just was straightforward. Whereas in this section, you went back in time, you got objects, you came back to your real world, you implement that object to get the coin and put in the door. Now, the part I didn't like about this section is that they use mini cutscenes in a way. I'm calling it mini cutscene because it just, outright came out and told you exactly what was happening. And I think that was a bad thing, because I love the old Silent Hill, how they use vague explanation for certain things. Like, for example, if you remember in Silent Hill 3 in the Brookhaven Hospital, there was this note that you could read, and it told you about Heather, even though it didn't tell you that it is about Heather. But if you played the first game, you know that it was talking about Alyssa, which it didn't reveal to be Heather. If you didn't play Silent Hill 3, whatever, just go play the game. But spoilers, it revealed that Heather's Alyssa, but it didn't tell you Heather was Alyssa, right? So that was like one note. And then there was like this like subplot in this section about creepiness, and it was like a symbolism about obsession and creepiness. And it was throughout notes that you read of a guy really loving Heather and being obsessed with Heather. And I think these little subplots and I don't know, being vague about this specific section in the hospital is cool. I think they should do that more. I was hoping they did this in this game, whereas they were very vague, but throughout what the player learned, they could connect it together and see, you know, what's going on for that specific section. It doesn't have to be about the story, but it is a cool world building tactic that the old game did that didn't really implement in this game, which I was hoping they did. And everything is very straightforward. Like, the only example I can maybe think of that was about subplots and a little story of the school was probably when they talked about the principal losing a key. But either way, that key was to open more section of the game, or to solve a puzzle. And I think that's what this game suffered from. I was hoping it wasn't just about going into a room, here's a note, solve the puzzle, and then getting out of that room, going to the next room, here's a note, solve the puzzle, throughout the hints we give you. And it's exactly what it did, and I am disappointed in that way. I didn't like that. I want little sub stories forcing the player to read the notes more, whereas in the only reason I pick up notes is because I can just press G and go to my journal and solve the puzzle. Like, for example, in the school there was this locker room puzzle. I'm expecting, okay, there's gonna be a mini story about, maybe some traumatic thing the protagonist went through in school or something. And, that's there, but it's told to you vaguely. But no, none of that happened. Or maybe a story about the other children, the other students in the school, about their, experience in the school. Not really. The only note I found is about a bus. And I was thinking, okay, maybe this is like a little subplot, I can learn a bit about the world in this section, right? No, the bus is just a code to tell you the locker room code. I think that's boring. I think they should have done something like the old Silent Hill did, where, yes, you're not, they give you a hint about the puzzle you're going to solve, even though the hints in the older Silent Hill games were a lot harder than this game. This game, the hints are very, very easy. If I can solve them, they're pretty easy. But that's besides the point. So the environment in the specific section doesn't tell you anything. Doesn't give you any mini story and mini subplot about it. I was trying to think of more example, but the game doesn't really have that. It doesn't have that going for it. Whereas in the old Silent Hill had vague stories and very poetic, cryptic stories that you couldn't really tell. You wouldn't be able to tell, unless you dive deeper, getting deeper and deeper into the game or into that specific section of the game. And I think that is disappointing that this game did not have that. The puzzles were merely just go in here, get the note, press G, go to your journal, and solve the puzzle from the hints they give you. Whereas in cool world building tactic would be give us like a mini story throughout that section. Let's say it's the school. Give us a story about the kids' experience with something. And, they experience, I don't know, bad grades or how a test was hard or something. But do it like in a cryptic, poetic way like the old Silent Hill used to do. I think that would have been cool. But that wasn't in the game, so that's pretty disappointing. Another pillar that makes up a good Silent Hill game, a great Silent Hill game at that, is the environment. The environment, the sound design, the ambience, the soundtrack, the art style, these go hand in hand. This is what made the originals great. Now in this game, I am disappointed in the environment and the atmosphere, but I will give a praise where credit's due. I will give credit where credit's due. The enemies, specific enemy I want to point out is the doll and the scarecrow enemies. These enemies' sound design is good. Very good. Their ambient noise is also pretty good. They are good. They sometimes got me. I remember when I played the original Silent Hill games, it gave me chills when I heard like some of the monsters in Silent Hill 3, some of the monsters in Silent Hill 2, even Silent Hill 1. They gave me chills, and that's good. The game did well when it came to the dolls. I will give it credit. The dolls and the scarecrow kids, whatever they represent, which we'll get into in the story, these gave me the creeps. I will be honest, those were good. The sound design in them are pretty good. Even the art book kind of showed them off, and you can tell the vision they had for it. Very good. The sound, very good. Even though, you know, the doll and the I don't know, puppet is kind of, you know, overdone in this specific day and age, but either way, they did pretty well in that instant. I'm not going to take that away from them. But when it comes to like the atmosphere, the fog, and the set dressing, how they make things look, I can't say I truly hate this game as much as I hated Silent Hill 2 Remake, because, you know, the art style in Silent Hill 2 Remake just cannot be recreated in this Unreal Engine 5, but that's another rant I've already done. This game, I think the Japanese aesthetic, I think the pink reddish fog towards the end of the game looked pretty good. It looked good. I will say the disappointing part is that there was no eerie feeling, there was no uncomfortableness, it didn't give me that feeling, because this is a horror game, by the way. It's supposed to be doing that. The ambience did start off pretty well, and then it started just drowning by, I don't know, other sound effects in the game. It is suffering from that modern horror game toned down, muted music in the background, or sound effects. Like, there are certain areas where a loud thump would happen, but it was so low it didn't really scare me. Whereas if you take example from the original Silent Hills, when it had a specific sequence like that, it would scare the crap out of the player because it was so loud in their ears and it would happen out of nowhere. Whereas in this game, the sound is very muted, especially like towards the halfway of the game. I started not noticing the soundtrack at all, and the ambience at all, because it's been very muted, and this is something most horror games in this day and age is suffering from. It is underrated how the old Silent Hills had the soundtrack very loud in your ears. That is underrated. That needs to come back in these horror games. But let's not get deeper into that, right? So the environment is cool. It looks good. I think the Japanese, like I said before, the Japanese aesthetics really carries it. But when it comes to how I feel about it, I don't get this feeling of scared, or I'm getting chills, or it feels very dead and decrepit or grunge. If you remember from the older the Silent Hill 1, if you remember that game, the other world was very red and grunge and, you know, brown. It gave you that feeling of very disgusting and eerie, especially like Silent Hill 3 also. I'll take that example. When you go to the other world and the blood on the wall and that green brown look really set the atmosphere. It really did. But when it came to this game, I don't know what it was going for. I mean, there was a puzzle. I will just, before we even get into the story, there was a puzzle about blossom and flowers. I guess that could be, you know, part of the environment, but it didn't really, based on how the story is going, it didn't portray that feeling that it was trying to go for, that uncomfortable and that traumatic event. I don't think it really gave me that feeling in that way. And I think this is where I was mostly disappointed. The soundtrack is not really S tier. Okay, fine, maybe I shouldn't expect S tier, but it's not really B tier either. I don't even think it's A tier, depending on how you have your tier list. What I'm saying is it's about like a 5 or a 6 in that way. But it's not really that good. It's not really that memorable. The way the art design is not really that good either, especially it suffers from that Unreal Engine 5 way about it. And I think that is a big disappointment, especially this is one of the pillars that made a great Silent Hill game, and it didn't really do it for me. I didn't feel like it's worthy enough to point out. If it was good, again, like I said with some of the enemies, great. The sound design's good for them. But when it comes to environment and atmosphere, when you're by yourself, no enemies, and you're just walking alone, it doesn't really give you that feeling of uncomfortable and scared and anxious, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to come right out and tell you this game is anti-marriage propaganda, anti-men propaganda. It is feminist propaganda. No matter how much you want to cope and you do not want to hear it, but it is true. The game forces you and tells you about this.
Idiot! How many times do I have to tell you?
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Did you even taste this? It has no flavor. You're making me drink mud. You can't even do something simple like this. What kind of a worthless woman can't make miso soup?
Now, before I even played the game, I remember reading a article before the game came out about how this game was supposed to portray 1960 feminism and how women are stuck in, you know, in traditional roles and stuff like that. Now, at the start of the game, you will not notice that at all. You will not see it. I think about 75% through the game, the game will just outright tell you. And especially if you're not reading the journals that you're picking up, you will not understand what's going on, because the game starts with the normal world, and then it jumps into the other world, and then stuff like rituals starts happening and you don't understand what's going on. But I can give you a brief summary of what I understand throughout my playthrough. So at the start, you instantly figure out that your protagonist, which is by the name of Hinako, is rebellious. I think even there's a journal that says that she is rebellious. She even said it herself, that she's rebellious and she doesn't like people telling her what to do. And mind you, she is 15 years old. Where does she get that power to even say that or even think that way? Especially you're trying to portray this in the 1960s, correct? There's no way a 15-year-old is going to be able to leave her parents' house. Throughout the start of the story, she got into an argument with her dad and she left the house. So you can't tell me I'm supposed to believe a 15-year-old is just going to leave the house and never come back and her parents do not care about that. I don't know if I agree with that, but that's immersion break and even. But either way, she is a rebellious child. I think she even mentioned how her sister, she loved her sister, and how her sister, grew up to be the favorite child because she would listen and do what the dad and mom would say. And I think the sister is essentially married, because towards the end you see the sister and she's married and she's in the traditional, arranged marriage. And mind you, dude, they're trying to say they hate traditional marriage. Mind you, in Japan right now, the birth rate is super low. And why? It's because of women in the workplace. But we're not gonna get deep into that. Not even Japan. I think throughout all of the world, birth rate is starting to decline. But that's that, right? This game wants to portray, oh, well, you shouldn't get married. You shouldn't, have arranged marriage, which I get. Arranged marriage could be bad, but you cannot say all of arranged marriage is bad. But that's that, right? So the game essentially is trying to tell you that marriage is bad because towards the end of the game, you find out, if you read the mom's journal, you find out that she also hates her mom. Not only she hates her dad, the reason she hates her dad, I'll start with dad first. The reason she hates her dad is because her dad became abusive by drinking and gambling. He lost money, so then he became abusive to, and not even like, I don't think he even hit the mom. I think he threw a knife at them or something, and he's always verbally abusing her, right? Now, I would have mercy in the game if that was the case. But that's not the case. The game is trying to tell me that all men are like this, because there's also a journal that talks about how she thought only her dad was like that, but then she looked around and she says all men are like this. So she made the conclusion all dudes are like this. None of them are good, despite towards the end I'll get to that later. But either way, she think that all men are bad in that way. There is a journal that says that. So the game is trying to convince you that men in that is bad and women are oppressed in that way. And she hates her mother because her mother stayed and did nothing about the marriage. Now, how am I supposed to think about this? Because this is the 1960s. There's no way women didn't work during that time. There's no way especially in Japan, at least I think, there's no way the mom would be able to get out of the marriage. She was already married to the dad. I think she was essentially trying to make the marriage work. Yes, you can blame the dad. I would have mercy if the story had the thing where the dad became drunk and, abusive, and she maybe despised her dad, right? I would be able to take that. But she went into all men are bad.
We don't have a choice. It's a woman's role in society.
And all men are like this. All men. She even said she learned about the word patriarchal through her dad. Hello? She is essentially saying all men are bad, and I take it that way because throughout the whole story, everything is portrayed. Like the monsters, for example. Let's take the monsters. So the monsters also represent something. There are a lot of female monsters, and I think 3 monsters represent men. And I think there's one in all 4s saying, I guess, men are pervert, because there's a journal that talks about this creature on all 4s and how typical men, she said something like typical men or something. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I will show this stuff on the screen, so you can be sure to pause and read it. So she's saying there are 3 monsters that are men. There are 2 big monsters that are fat, and I think one of them are in the real world and the other one is in the other world. So the monster in the real world still represents her dad, or men in general, because I think she even wrote in the journal that this monster like screeches and make everything quiet and is very, alpha. I don't know. I don't want to use the word alpha, but it's oppressive. This monster is very oppressive, right? It shouts, and make everything quiet, and it doesn't listen to anything anyone has to say. And mind you, this is from the dad's story, because the dad kind of became that way, but she portrays all men to be that way, right? So then you have the women monsters that are the dolls, and then you have the scarecrow children, which we'll get to a little bit. But the women monsters essentially are naked and they're like dolls in a way. And I don't know, I'm guessing they're supposed to be saying that women are used and abused and very oppressed in a way where they can't really do anything, so they become dolls. Because there are a couple of journals I've read where she says, well, are women supposed to be, or were they supposed to be this way, or were they all along meant to be this way based on, you know, societal standards. And there are other women monsters that are also pregnant. This is why I think this game is also anti-pregnant propaganda, because in a way it's saying that the monsters are just spewing out more monsters. So women being pregnant into the world are just bringing out more monsters into the world instead of, you know, good. So in a way it's saying pregnancy is bad, and pregnancy and being anti-pregnancy is essentially what should happen. But this doesn't make sense, because then you wouldn't be there, Hinako, because I think in part of the journal she says that she'd rather die than become one of those monsters that spew out more monsters. So again, this is another well, pregnancy is bad, non-pregnancy is good. In a way it doesn't make sense, because then how would we have people? But we're not getting deep into that section either. So that is that part. Now the Scarecrow monsters, I do not know what they represent. In a way I think they mean that children are just meant to be here to follow rules. Essentially, again, it's just men carrying, you know, the burden of everything. Man is the problem. But either way, I think these kids are supposed to be, because there are boys and girls in the Scarecrow, or these moving crow monsters. The reason that there are boys in there is because also they want to say that in the society, boys also have to grow up, and, you know, they also are in arranged marriage. And because towards the end, depending on the ending you get, it says the guy that you're getting married to, spoiler alert, also didn't want to be in the arranged marriage. So it's essentially saying both parties are trapped into this arranged marriage problem. And, you know, but women suffers the most because of the men in the marriage. That's another thing. And then you have the doll-like monsters that have a lot of faces on them, and I think they signify children making fun of other children or bullying, because and throughout the story, one of your friend, and I know I didn't go over some of the characters because I don't think it's that big a deal. The message is what matters more. So throughout the story, one of your friends kind of like make fun of you because she has a crush on the guy that likes you, apparently, and she makes fun of you a lot. So I'm guessing her monster is that, like, kids just bullying each other, again because of the society, because of men. Children ended up becoming like this and becoming the way she is, because there are times where she just makes fun of you for no reason, all because there's a man present or there's a guy present, right? So either way, that's that monster. And then throughout the story, you get into the other world with this guy that has a fox face, and mind you, this is 1960 and he's also have a painted nails. I call him the fanboy guy, but either way, you as Hinako, every time you go into the other world, you see that you're progressively getting worse. Like there's a part where you even cut off your arm as like almost like a sacrifice thing. Your face, you cut off your face. You also get pierced in the back, so as in like you get stamped or something, saying that women is objects and, you know, whatever, they get abused, and, you know, they don't choose this life but the life chooses them and stuff like that. Mind you, again, we're gonna bring up the Japan birth rate again, but either way, so throughout the other world, you essentially are preparing to get married. And then there's a section where you do get married with the guy in the other world, and you become a big monster with a traditional Japanese wedding gown, right? So essentially, the monster that was following you throughout the world, the fog monster, is essentially you. You are causing havoc on yourself. Essentially, I think it means that your head, you're trying to battle against the traditional way that they want you to be, but you can't, you know, you have to kind of submit to it, because there are about, I think, 5 endings in the game. If you don't count the UFO, there's 4. So there's an ending that everyone gets, which is the first ending, and then when you play New Game Plus, you can get the bad ending, which is you submitting and actually liking the person that you were put in the arranged marriage. Mind you, that's the bad ending. The bad ending is you liking the guy that you were put to marry to. You tried to make it work despite, maybe you didn't want it at the start, but you as Hinako trying to make that marriage work, that was the bad ending, which I think, how is this not pointed out in reviews? That has to be propaganda. They're trying to say that women aren't happy in their marriage, and don't get me started with women now from that specific thing, but women aren't happy in arranged marriages, which is not true. I'm sure it's not all women that are happy. I'm sure some not happy in their arranged marriage, and that's not because they don't like the guy. It's because that's not the guy they wanted. But that's besides the point. We're not gonna get deeper into that. But either way, you become a big monster. Essentially, you kill your parents also throughout the story. I didn't really understand that because I thought, okay, because during that section when you kill your parents, I thought Hinako was going to learn, okay, maybe I should embrace the traditional way and try to make it work, because she essentially says, you took everything from me, including my parents, right? Talking to the monster, which is you. She essentially says that. I'm thinking, okay, maybe she's learning. All right, maybe I will embrace that way and I will try to live good through the traditional way. No, she didn't, because it didn't make sense, because towards the end you still turn into that monster and then you fight that monster and you beat that monster, saying that, okay, I've overcame the traditional way and I'm going my own way, and I'm not going to do what the society or the patriarch will tell me to do. I'm not kidding. This is actually in the game. Read the journals. This is in the game. This is what the game wants you to believe. This is the message they are portraying. So in another ending, I think so the first ending is the normal ending where you fight the monster to the end or something like that, and you just battling against the monster. Essentially, you're still in the traditional marriage, but you're just battling the monster forever, right? As being unhappy. And then you have the second ending which is the bad ending, where you meet your sister and you confront her. Why are you on their side? Because your sister is also married, but she's in the traditional, married, and she's doing the woman role, gender role stuff. And she's trying to tell you, mind you, she admired her sister before she got married, because she was nice to her and stuff like that. So if you admire your sister, wouldn't you listen to your sister in a way? If you see her in an arranged marriage, would you kind of listen to her advice and what she says? Because the sister's trying to tell her, just do it. Be in the arranged marriage, try to find happiness in it. Whereas she didn't want to do that, because again, she's a rebellious child and she didn't want to listen to her. So despite her love for her sister, her rebelliousness is too high for her to listen to her sister in that way. So you meet your sister in this bad ending, and you battle yourself again. This time it's not your bride self. This is your wolf stage self. And then throughout this bad end, the reason it's a bad ending is because you and the guy that got married just live happily ever after. But there's a quick second after that's showing you, in torment, saying, oh, I'm not happy. I didn't want to be, in this, whatever, trapped in this marriage. So that's essentially why it's a bad ending, because you actually accepted the traditional role and tried to make it work. And mind you, the guy's actually not a bad guy that you were marrying. He seemed pretty nice and gentlemanlike, but it's not enough. It has to be that it's bad and I don't have the choice to do it. But he didn't have the choice either, so it doesn't even make sense. But either way, I didn't have the choice, and based on my mom's marriage, I'm going to think that every marriage is like that. But either way, so that's that ending, and then you have the UFO ending, and then you have the canon ending. Yes, I said canon. Then you have the canon ending. This is what the devs wanted to be canon. And this is where she goes her own way and pick none of the guys. So essentially you had two love interests, which is Shu, I don't know his name, just Asian guy that you grew up with and you called partner. And then you have the guy that you were put in the traditional, the arranged marriage. She picked none of them. That is the Kenan ending. She went her own way to find herself. How is that not feminist propaganda? She went out of her own way to find herself and just left. Left her parents behind, left everyone behind. Doesn't care that everything happened. That's it. That's the Kenan ending. And that's the ending the devs wanted you to get. And this is after you played the game like 3 times. I'm not playing it 3 times to get that ending. That's dumb. But either way, that is the story. I'm not making this up. All of this is in the journal. I would try to provide as much evidence as possible. But if you just read the journal 3 seconds, you would already see that she hates men, because there's a part of, before she even like blamed her dad, there's a part where she says, I hate people telling me what to do. And my sister always told me, in order for you to be happy in this society, you have to abide by what society wants women to be. And I'm not kidding. This is in the game. And you can't tell me otherwise. That's not feminist propaganda. That's not anti-marriage propaganda. And you can't tell me the one little section about the monster, pregnant monster, and her saying she doesn't want to be that pregnant monster. You can't tell me that's not anti-pregnancy propaganda. I've always said Heather Mason is a good female character. And that's because, well, men wrote her. Okay, maybe I shouldn't say it that way, but that's because her character is actually written well. And the story is written very well. Despite it's a female character, she doesn't throw things at your face. She doesn't throw hate at your face. She doesn't hate men. She doesn't, the game doesn't throw propaganda in your face. The story is written very well. There are a lot of symbolic events that portray womanhood in Silent Hill 3, and I was hoping this game would go over that, or at least dive into that if you're going to make a feminist thing, or I'll still call out some of this stuff, but at least make it bearable and at least make the story good enough, like Silent Hill 3. There's a lot of symbolic events that represent stalking and period and birth. These are things you can dive into if you are a female, so that other females can relate to it. But they did not decide to dive into that. It is arranged marriage and how one man turned every man bad. And I think this is why this game is disappointing, because the story, not only the environment was disappointing, not only the puzzles were disappointing, but the story itself just spew a whole bunch of propaganda in your face, and there's nothing you can do about it. And there's no other way to think but the specific way they want you to think there. And there's no vague information for me to maybe interpret it a different way. I still think the devs wanted you to know it exactly the way they wanted you to know it. And that is not what I wanted for this game. And I think that's what made it bad. And I wish they would stop making Silent Hill. This is not my Silent Hill. This is not Silent Hill at all to me. I wish they would stop making these games, or at least I would accept this over the remake any day. I will accept this over the remake any day, because at least I know the original games are still here and they're still good and they are still superior. But there's nothing you can do about it. And Silent Hill 1 is not going to be good. Silent Hill 1 is going to be depressing too. It is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it. As sad as it sounds, it's true. I mean, my favorite games will just keep getting remade over and over, but this is not a remake, so I don't have to cry about that. But this game was disappointing. It had good going for it. It had, I did point out the good things. I like I said, the enemies I love, or at least some of them. I love the sound design in them. I think the Japanese aesthetic and the color palette, the things they put together, I liked it. And the more I look at the art book, the more I am sad that this game is not fixed camera and it's over the shoulders. I mean, the artwork looks actually good. The artwork looks good, and that's the thing is, you cannot really try to put this in this engine, because then you have the realism, and I've already ranted about realism. But either way, the artwork is good. I can see the vision. This is why I wish they would have went fixed camera, because then you would be able to kind of splurge us with more of that art. But it is what it is. They didn't go that direction. Either way, yeah, that's the video. Thanks for watching. Until Silent Hill 1 Remake.